What is going on, everyone? Welcome once again to the Bass Kayak and Beers podcast. My name is Armando. Remember, you can follow me on Instagram on the Bass Kayak and Beers and Facebook, also on the Bass Kayak and Beers. Great episode for you today. Great guest. We've had him on the podcast before. Big fan of this young man and what he's done at such a young age in our young sport of kayak fishing. That is Mr. Ewing Minor. Very excited. He just won the Broken Bow tournament, a tournament that I took a part of this weekend. Very disappointing for me, and we'll talk a little bit about that before we bring in Ewan. But kind of wanted to touch on something. As much as some of you know that follow this sport, May 8th, 2022, passing away of Ray Scott. You know, he's the founder of bass fishing, as we know, Bass Anglers Sportsmen's Society, as we lovingly refer to as BASS. He really had the vision of turning the pastime of bass fishing into a actual sport. And big props to what he's done. Honestly, none of us would be enjoying this sport at the way we are right now if it wasn't for what Ray Scott did. Other than that, I mean, he really spearheaded having live wells, and catch and release, which if you think about it, if we didn't have that, how long would this sport be sustainable if, every tournament it was catch and keep, so big props to him on that. Definitely it's going to be missed, a void in the bass fishing community. I wouldn't be having this podcast. I wouldn't be taking part of a tournament in the Hobie B.O.S. probably if it wasn't for the work and the groundwork that Ray Scott did. So deeply saddened by the departure of Ray Scott, as both of you are as well, I'm sure. Other than that, like I mentioned, Hobie B.O.S. Broken Bow took a part in that tournament. Unfortunately for me, it was a completely different result from what Ewan had. Pre-fishing was amazing. I think everybody that I talked to in pre-fishing, when you go to pre-fishing, and I'm not a huge expert on it, I just know a little bit about competitive and tournament fishing. But what I've learned is you look for where the bite is, and you try to cancel water and cancel baits, meaning where you can't find them, you make sure you don't go there, on tournament day unless the conditions change. What baits are not working, so you narrow what baits you're going to use and what areas you're going to fish. Thursday, you cannot cancel a bait. You cannot cancel an area. I mean, I had that experience, and everyone that I talked to on the water that pre-fished Thursday and Friday had the same thing. It was like no matter what you threw, no matter where you threw it, you were catching bass. There wasn't big bass, but there were. Honestly, Friday I was catching like 20 bass. Thursday, I went to another area upriver. All my pre-fishing was upriver, and that was not as many bass, but still, I got my limit on my pre-fishing limit on the first 30 minutes, and then from that, I spent most of the day looking for big bass. So, didn't catch much on Thursday. On Saturday, I'm sorry, on Friday. On Saturday, I went to the spot that I went on Friday, and I just could not put on a limit. The first spot that I had narrowed down, I was catching them, but they were short strikes, missed short strike, 10-inch bass. I mean, I could not, for the life of me, get a measurable fish. Not until later that day. Ended up with to really play with my head and my emotional state, if I'm being honest. I mean, at one point, I just wanted to crawl up in a fetal position and die, or cry, I should say. Sunday was just fun fishing. I only caught 2 fish on Saturday, so Sunday just make sure I was out of the way of anybody that was in the money, or still with a chance to get in the money. So I would, wherever I see somebody, I would just kind of pick and choose places where there was nobody. So I didn't catch much and didn't expect to catch much, honestly. I was just there to enjoy the lake, beautiful lake, Broken Bow. But anything, you don't want to hear about my day. You want to hear about Ewing Minor, my next guest for the day. That's who you want to hear about from Broken Bow. So let's bring him. Let's bring him in. Before we do that, shout out to Douglas Outdoors. Douglas Outdoors, sponsor of my podcast. Go check out their LRS lineup, X Matrix lineup, and fly fishing. If you're into fly fishing, award-winning fly fishing, that is douglasoutdoors.com. Quick commercial from Waypoints, and we'll bring in your minor. Mr. Your Minor, how are you today, buddy?
Doing good.
Congratulations, man, on your big win at Broken Bow. How did that feel?
It felt really good, especially coming out off of what was a horrible streak ever since the TOC when I had 4 fish on day 1. Similar to your experience on Broken Bow, I had solid practice, went out there, my game plan didn't work, tried to figure out something, never got the 5th fish in the boat for the first. I guess I was three tournaments. Really struggled, frustrated with myself. I was super excited when I got down to Broken Bow. There were lots of fish biting.
Yeah.
Like, all right, at least I don't have to worry about if I'm going to get a limit or not, because it was, I had fish in all stages. Yep. They were up shallow, out deep. There were fish on bushes, had fish in a marina. Anything that you could fish, there were going to be fish on. And believe it or not, to my surprise, my biggest fish were coming on a drop shot during practice. I just decided I'd go with that. Those fish wouldn't get as much pressure. Stay away from more people. I was fishing stuff that was pretty obvious on the map, but I was covering a good amount of points throughout the day, and I was using my live scope to just pinpoint the spot within the spot.
Yeah, I would imagine first of all, it's a beautiful lake. Never been there before. If you go upriver, you really had to cut your fishing time short, because if you wanted to get out of water, you got to get out early. Because there was not a cell signal for especially if you launch on I forgot the name of that ramp, but there are like 3 ramps upriver. The first one, just to get there, is 30 minutes of just driving through the woods. You almost needed an hour. Take your last hour of fishing tournament to just get signal and upload your fish. You fish more on the main lake, is that correct?
Yes, I did.
And it's interesting because everywhere that I've talked to, like you mentioned, you caught him on the main lake, pre-fishing on the upriver. Everybody was catching him. Garrett Morgan, who jumped like 20 positions on day 2, was just on top water the whole day, and you're doing drop shots the whole day pretty much. It's an amazing fishery. It's kind of sad that nobody could really consistently get a 20-inch bite. You think about Lake Fork, where if to win a tournament, you need, especially a 2-day tournament, you need maybe 2 or 3, even 4 20-inch bass just to win the tournament. And this one, your biggest fish was only 19 and a half, right? I think that's correct. And that was on the drop shot?
Yep, everything. All 10 of them.
All 10 of them on the drop shot. How deep were you catching them?
I was catching them in 14 to 18 foot.
Wow. And just offshore points?
Points, humps, roadbed, anything that a fish would stop at. They were moving out, water was dropping, water was warming up. I was just looking for those places that looked like the first place that the fish would stop at before they really go deep and try to get in. It was very similar to a Eastern Tennessee lake, which I'm fortunate enough to fish a lot now that I go to Carson Newman. And I was thinking these fish are probably sitting on these points, these humps. I was fishing around some islands, just places that they would go before they would go, to somewhere else in the nearby area that's maybe 30 foot deep, where they would most likely hold during the summer.
Would you say that most of your fish were, as far as you can tell, post-spawn females?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
They were all post-spawn fish. They were just moving out, and as the water dropped, the fish kept coming. When I left at the end of the final day, there were more fish than when I showed up on the first day.
Wow.
They were
that
just
is crazy.
Constantly coming. The water dropped. I never looked at the numbers, but I bet it was at least 1.5 to 2 feet during the 2 days of the tournament alone.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting because I think 2 weeks prior to the tournament, I'm imagining that it had rained a lot, and I heard the uh, the lake level was at 12 feet above pool. That's what I've heard. Now, I don't quote me on that. I'm not sure. Then I heard it by like a week before the tournament, it had dropped down to like 5 feet above pool, and then by tournament lines in, it was pretty much even. Like they were really drawing out water. Um, I think that had to do a lot with it. When you think, okay, post spawns, females are moving out of their beds, the water dropping, the temperature skyrocketing. I mean, the water temperature was 80 degrees, and if like either between 78 and 82 degrees everywhere I fished. So
Mm-hmm.
I think those all those factors made it like completely different dynamic, at least that I'm used to fishing. Just because I think I really thought whoever wins this is gonna have to find that deep water by, not crazy deep like 40, 50 feet, but something around what you had, like that between 20 and 10 feet. Did
Uh,
you go ahead?
no, it was how you said the water was up. It was, I was planning on going there, doing finesse fishing, maybe throw a little bit of big swim baits around, which I did catch a lot of fish on a mag draft each day. They just didn't help. But I went there. I guess it was right before I left. I saw Ryan Lambert. He posted something about a high dirty water fishing at Broken Bow. I was like, oh no, don't tell me this one's flooded. And I looked, the water was 4 foot high. I was like, oh, we should still have some clean water. I had no clue if that lake got muddy. There's not much information on the lake if you do research.
Yeah.
So I was kind of going in. I went from, expecting to fish deep the whole time to, oh, there's probably fish in the bushes, which there were tons of them. I caught during practice probably 15, 20 fish a day on a buzz bait just going down the bank. And they just weren't the size that I was looking for. And I was catching better ones offshore, stayed out there. When the wind would pick up, during the tournament, I'd throw a mag draft down the bank. On day one, I caught 6 that were all under like 16.75 was my biggest or my smallest fish. So they were very aggressive and hungry fish.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's one thing that I noticed. And a healthy fishery, the fish that I caught, usually like here in Texas, you catch a big fish and you'll notice. And I'm not talking about spawning bass where you see the tail kind of bloody. That's normal. But like with little like ulcers or parasites and stuff like that, every fish that I caught in pre-fishing and even during the tournament, there were beautiful spotted bass. You can tell they were healthy because they were fighter, aggressive, and I mean, just picture perfect fish in the sense that you didn't see any like fish that were like like you can tell it had parasites or it had like a rough day or something like that. It was just like very healthy fishery from what I can tell.
Yeah, they definitely were really healthy, and they pulled very hard. The 19 and a half that I caught on day one, by the way, it was fighting. I was thinking this is going to be a 21, 22 fish. And I get it in the net, and it's put it on the board. It's a 19 and a half. And it took me, over a minute to land a fish, which is a pretty good amount of time considering I was using 8-pound line. You have a decent amount of control. And they'd run you all over the place. They never gave up. Even the 14, 15 inchers, if you were fishing topwater, they were so mean and fought so hard. When they'd blow up, you have a 14-inch of any 3 of the species blow up on your topwater, and you think it's a 5-pounder.
Yep.
And then it pulls like a 3-pounder, and it's 14 inches.
Yeah. I had that experience, and taking a picture of it too was just a hassle, man. They would not stay still. I try to be hands off because with the rules, I always kind of forget that I just try to be as hands off as I can. But with this ones, it was hard, man. They were just, they first fish, it took me like 10 minutes just to get a picture of it because they would not stay still. And again, very healthy fishery. For those that haven't gone to Broken Bow, it's very different from a lot of lakes I've seen, even country lakes, county lakes, because there was really no boathouses. It is very primitive area. Up, like I said, upriver, like there's really no ramp. I mean, there is some ramps, but they're not maintained. Not even the roads are maintained. It's just gravel roads for miles and miles. Um, so I think that keeps the health, the ecosystem on that lake as prime as you can find, and hopefully it'll stay that way for a lot more years because it's a beautiful, beautiful area, beautiful lake.
It really is. Anyone that thinks about going, if Hobie goes back next year, I mean, there's no reason to go. It's a beautiful area. The town's great there.
Yes.
And if you want to catch a bunch of fish, that's where you need to be. I haven't had a day like any of the 4 days I fished down there in over a year. I feel like it's just everything you did, they'd bite.
Yep.
It's a really good time out there, and it
Yes.
showed with the leaderboard with almost every single person. It was like 40 or 50 spots had 80 inches on day one.
Yep. It was crazy because I know the house that I was staying, trying to remember, I think it was Matt or Kyle, I can't remember which one. There were 11 of us staying at the house, and I mean, the one that had the highest spot in our house was just 4 inches away from the leader, but like 30 positions down. And it was like, at first you think, okay, I only need 4 more inches to on the next day to go ahead of the leader. But it's not only that, it's those 30 people that are in between you and the leader also need to not have that good day. So it really was misleading when you think about it. You think, oh, even if you think, oh, I'm only 10 inches behind, you know, I got a shot. If you were 10 inches behind the leader on day one, you probably weren't even in the money on day two. I mean, that's how crazy it was. And I think, if I remember correctly, the top out of 173, I think 130 something caught a limit. And that's crazy too. You know, usually you see half the field, sometimes less, but in this one's like almost everyone was catching a limit on this lake. And limits were coming like in the morning bite was crucial. Like the guys, I remember talking to Rolando Nandina. I was staying with him on the Airbnb with the rest of the guys, and he was saying, you know, you got to catch that limit. And limits would come in the first 30 minutes of lines in. That it was that easy. But again, the big bites, that was the hard thing to figure it out. When you think about the lines out day one, you take a look at the leaderboard, and you're about 5 spots behind the leader. If I remember correctly. Go ahead.
I was in second place behind him by a quarter inch.
Oh, at second place? I thought you were further down. My bad.
That was Ryan was in like 5th place or 6th place.
Oh yeah, that is Ryan. Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking, and I'm also thinking about day two. Day two, you came in like 3rd or 4th, right? But just ahead of I forgot his name, Tro. I should have looked it up. I apologize. But anyways, when you look at when you lines out at day one, how confident were you that you were gonna be able to win this? If you were confident at all?
I knew that I had a chance to win it. I wasn't sure. I was around the right fish. They were biting. I had a lot of people in my area, but I wasn't extremely worried about it because the last spot that I fished on day 2, I had already caught several fish on it throughout the day. Stopped back on it. I caught a fish, and 3 of them followed it up right next to the boat. So I knew that there were just constantly fish moving in. Didn't think I'd have any issues with running out of fish, but day 2 when I showed up, everything was slick. I couldn't find fish for the first hour or 2 of the tournament. But then once that sun got up and things got heated up, they really showed up in a big way.
So that's interesting because that's a little bit different than what I've kind of. Well, to me, the morning bite on Sunday was there were a lot of bites. Then the sun came out and it got the bite to me in the area I was fishing like completely died down. And again, I'm fishing, looking for areas where nobody's fishing because I wasn't going to be in the money. So I didn't want to, you know, be the reason why somebody doesn't catch a check. So I try to stay away from anybody that was fishing. I would assume anybody that was fishing that area had a chance in the money. So to me, I was just wherever I find a spot. So that might be different. But I didn't notice the bite picking up till later, closer to like 12 noon, when the wind started picking up. Was that the same for you?
When I caught him, it was actually slick calm. I noticed that lake. I discussed this with Steve Fields. Something about the just the geography around that lake. He said that I noticed that the wind would just gust for like 30 minutes. It'd be like a 30-minute long gust blowing 15 miles an hour out of one direction, and then it would go slick calm. And then you'd have another 30 windy minutes, and it'd be coming from a different direction. But it was during one of those slick calm periods that I caught most of my fish on day 2.
Yeah,
and
it was in. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think that was mainly due to the fact that I could really stay positioned on those fish. As I was catching them, I wasn't have to work at all. I got to sit there and focus on making them bite.
That's pretty awesome, man. The way that you found him, able to figure it out, props to you. And just kind of clarify and apologize to Tovu. And I hope I said that right. He's from Oklahoma. He came in second. And you're right. You came in. I was thinking of day 2 when you came down. I think third place. You came. When you look at the end of lines out at day 2, you're sitting, 86 and a half inches compared to what you had on day 1, which was 88 and a half inches. So now you got 2 inches less. How confident were you that, like, man, did I win this? Or were you thinking you were not going to be able to make it?
Well, I had a feeling that I would be able to beat Toe because he was, both day 1 and day 2, he caught him early, he caught him quick. He didn't cull after that. I was pretty confident that he didn't, but then again, I was only leading by half an inch once I added things up, and that's unofficial. He could have held a big fish.
Yeah.
And so I was nervous, but I did what I had to do. There's always going to be that tournament that you do everything you can do. You put the fish in the boat and you come up second or third, and it's frustrating, but as long as I put in the work, I land the fish I need to. I was like, I put myself in position to win. If I didn't, it is what it is. But I was mainly worried about the guys that didn't have service.
Yeah.
And there was, because it was Cody Milton. He was going to some crazy place and scaling a mountain is how they described it with his kayak.
I think I know which one it is.
And he was took forever to get back to awards, and that was what stressed me out the most, was waiting on him because I wasn't sure what he had. I knew he was in a good position to where if he got the right bites, he, after talking to someone that was fishing launching with him, they were on very big fish, just couldn't get them, couldn't get a ton to commit, couldn't get them in the boat. And I was, that was my thought in the back of my mind was, what if he caught 90, 91 inches and passed me up? But you just do your best to stay calm and collected and go on.
Yeah, at that point, it was your job is done. It's just managing to see where the numbers fall, and all you have to do is kind of like hope and pray that it landed where we're in the top spot. Now, you mentioned that you kind of struggled after the TOC. I know the TOC must have been I would imagine even you being at a young age and making waves in a tournament. you should be proud of yourself, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
most 99% of the anglers out there, especially at that young age, wish they could be in your position. But however for you, you expect more of yourself, especially when you consider, you're in the pole position to win Angler of the Year at the TOC. That unfortunately wasn't in, didn't work out that way. And you mentioned yourself, you struggled things. Did losing the TOC and not winning Angler of the Year kind of like spilled over into this season? Do you think that's part of, your struggles, or you think that's just the late winter bite is not your thing?
No, I don't think it was even that. I'm usually like I was both on Santee Cooper and Toledo Bend. I was on good fish. Toledo Bend, I had the bite on day one. My fifth fish came off with 2 or 3 minutes to go. It came up and it was on top of the water. Tried to stick my net under it. It's like an 18, 19 incher. Jerkbait treble hook stick into the net because it dove back down and it came. And then similar thing at Santee Cooper, I broke off like an 18, 19 incher. It was on a bed. I had just retied using 17-pound line. Just one of those weird things. You know, those cypress trees, they're crazy. I set the hook and it broke off and then came up and jumped, and I got to see a good look at it. But those both day twos, I had great day twos. I did what I could. Got the last check at Santee Cooper. Got jumped like almost, I think it was 70 or 80 spots at Toledo Bend to go from in the hundreds to, I think I was 31st. So being able to do that was kind of kept my confidence up. But when I went into Eufaula and I struggled all day just for one 12-incher, that one really, it made me question. I was like, do I still know how to catch these darn things?
Yeah, I bet.
It's just, it wasn't my time to shine. Some tournaments it's meant to be. For those that, are struggling, it's one of those things you will be going struggling. And when it's your time, you can't do anything wrong.
That's true.
It's meant to happen. It's going to happen. It's hard to mess it up.
Yeah, I think Ryan Lambert has mentioned that on the podcast. Sometimes when it's your tournament, it's like you call your own shots at some point. At least it feels that way. Not that I've ever experienced it. Did you learn anything as far as from Eufaula? Because I'm big on, I don't try to get down on myself too much, but at the same time, I don't want to forget the failures, because that's what helps me kind of like, I don't want to be in that position again. So you don't get too depressed about it, but at the same time, you kind of want to remember what you did wrong and what you could have done right. Anything from the tournament in Eufaula that you took and says, this is what I got to do next, or this is where I have to improve?
Well, Eufaula was kind of a strange situation. Right after Santee Cooper, the motor in my car blew up. So I rode down to Eufaula with Jordan Marshall, and then he dropped me off. My brother was already down there, and I rode with my brother and fished the same launch. He was fishing there. I just launched there, went the opposite direction of him, and I had a decent practice, nothing great. I thought I can catch maybe 80 inches a day, but the water dropped out and I didn't adjust well. I caught my one fish and broke one off on the walkway of the docks. I was taking a jackhammer and throwing it. I'd get under the walkway, hold my shoulder against it, and edge of those pilings in the shade later in the day. But I think I might have been able to make something happen if I made that adjustment earlier. I made a bunch of other adjustments I tried to fish offshore. I tried to fish for fry garters, spawners, instead of just sticking to what I had found and trying to change and make it work. I kind of messed myself up on that one, but I was faced with weird circumstances. I wasn't comfortable on that part of the lake, and I learned not to go to that section again.
That's a good one. At least not that time of year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting how other things can affect your fishing, right? Like things that are maybe out of your control and all that. Now that you've kind of like punched your ticket for the TOC, do you feel what does it do for your confidence level now? And I'm assuming this is your first win in this season. Out of all
Yes.
the tournaments, this
Yeah.
is your first win. How does that give you confidence moving forward?
Well, it's just I don't have to worry as much about doing well. If there's a tournament, and I think if I can get 5 bites a day in this area, I'll win. Compared to, I could probably cut a check here. I'll go with the more risky option. I'm already in the TOC. I've got good AOY points for what I saw last year at the TOC. I think if I get a top 10 at one of these events, I'll be sitting within striking distance of AOY. Saw it last year at the TOC. I think it was the entire top 5 of AOY dropped out. I just want to have one more, really good finish. Not going to worry too much about, scrapping out a limit. I'm going to try to catch better fish. Hopefully make it to all of the Hobies this summer. Cut
Even
that.
Northeast?
Yes, I'm going to Winnipesaukee for sure. And then Susky, if someone, just is deciding not to go to the Susky, which I know the registration, it's filled up. There's a waiting list. Probably not going to get in through that at this point, but next year, that's an incredible fishery. It's definitely that and Broken Bow are hand in hand for me on the favorite stops now.
Now that you've got your sights set on the TOC or safely in the TOC, have you ever fished Cardo?
I have not.
So you're looking forward. I mean, it's a great fishery, and we saw what Cody Milton did there a couple of weeks ago. We saw it wasn't the same lake, but it was in that general area what Guillermo Gonzalez and Cody Milton did on the KBF National Championship last season. Are you excited about that lake, Cypress trees, water? Vegetation and all that.
Yeah, same thing with. I was excited for Santee with all of the cypress trees. I love fishing cypress trees. I've fished them, in high school, and during my tournaments, we had a couple on the James River, which has a lot of cypress trees. I fished them there. Just all of the stuff in southwestern Virginia that I fish. Not all the time, but I'd usually make 1 or 2 trips a month when I could fish. I'm very comfortable fishing cypress trees. The fishing in like the cypress forest is a little weird to me, but I got some experience at that on day 2 on Santee Cooper. So I'm really excited for that one. I think it should be a little bit better on me than Eufaula.
Yeah, but I'm sure it will. With your talent, there's it's hard to keep a good angler like yourself down for too long, and Broken Bow definitely proved that. Shifting to the Hobie B.O.S. College Series.
Yeah.
I know it's kind of like team events and also individual events. You and Jackson are on the same team. Hell of a team, I would imagine. Don't know what the landscape as far as team and anglers is for the Hobie B.O.S., but you two are one of the youngest stars in our sport. How does that compare to the Hobie B.O.S., fishing wise? Just when it comes to priorities or preference, which one do you rather win? The regular Hobie B.O.S., the Opens, or the College Series?
Hobie B.O.S. all day. There's not really much of a question there. The College Series, it's still new, it's small, it's getting started, but I think once people realize what's going on, they're probably going to hop in. There's a lot of opportunities there. Our team, we actually recently got team kayaks, we have 3 Hobie Outbacks from Dugout Bait and Tackle. They don't have graphs on them yet, but I believe we're getting 7-inch Lowrances. If anyone's interested in our kayak team, our coach is recruiting. It's just, you can find us on Instagram at CN Eagles. We've got you go to a kayak tournament, your gas is paid for, food is paid for, entry, fishing license. You can go, other than, tackle and snacks at the gas station, if you want to get a Red Bull or something, you can go to a tournament and not spend a dime.
Nice.
And, you can, if you don't have a kayak, we have we have the 3 team kayaks. With the way that the Hobie B.O.S. College Series is working, I think it's the overall team of the year gets a Outback for the team, and then I think the winner of the championship gets a PA12 or PA14 180 for the team. So hopefully we can get one of those, start to expand our fleet of kayaks a little more. But I'm really, really excited to see where things are going.
And you have to be all. Your team. You all. I'm assuming in pardon my ignorance. You all have to be from the same college. Is that correct?
Yes, on the team.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. And what college do you and Jackson go to?
Carson Newman University.
How many colleges are right now competing in the Hobie B.O.S. College Series?
I think there are 3 right now for this one, but it's, people have to get kayaks. Campbellsville, they've done a great job. They have their own team boats. They have a team trailer. They're out here right now on Chattooga. I ran into a couple of them. Then I'm not sure what the other college is that's fishing, but there's a couple of guys from there. I think there's 4 or 5 from Campbellsville. We have probably 5 or 6, and then another 2. So it's, it should be 10 to 12 people, a good little event.
That's awesome. And when it comes to for college, what does it mean? How does that help you for college, having this tournament, and for you personally or for the college and the team?
I think it's just going to help grow the sport. There's a lot of people that probably don't know about the kayak fishing route that you can take. You can have a top of the line kayak for, a fraction of what it would cost to have a decent boat with the necessary equipment on it. And it's just, you don't have gas bills. Everything's expensive right now.
Yeah.
There's a lot of opportunities. My brother, he fished college, and it was for a club, so it was not funded. Money came out of his pocket. He was fishing the college bass. He had a lot of success there. But just the financial part of that is he was spending a whole lot of money on those tournaments and not getting much back.
Yep.
And the way that the Hobies are set up, we don't have many people in the tournaments yet, so it can't be this way. But I talked to AJ, Steve Fields, and Steve Owens. They are all helping out with the college series, and they're working on getting it to where. So right now, first place team is $1,000. So they're for the team. It goes back, helps cover traveling expenses. If someone has a club sport, their team wins that tournament, they get $1,000. But as we get more people in the events, like if it maxes out, like caps out like the Hobie B.O.S. does, 200 people, the 20th place, Steve Field said that he was going to adjust the pay, take a little bit out of the top and middle, and make it to where last place was $1,000, so that the college anglers, they can, you go, if you cut a check, your expenses are covered, you can, go on back. But right now we just have that $1,000 for the team. There's AFCO gift card, Daiwa reel. There's a whole bunch of other stuff you can get. So it's just a good time, and hopefully it'll grow into something big. I really think it will.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, when you think about, Steve Fields, Steve Owens, AJ, I mean, what can you say? I mean, that hasn't been said already. There is such an amazing group of guys, individually, and when you get them as a group, that's a super team, right? Those three guys just kind of like spearheading the growth of this sport. I mean, thank God bless their heart for the job they've done with the Hobie B.O.S. and just kayak fishing in general. As the hobby grows, it kind of like lifts the water, right? Everybody grows. Everybody that's involved in kayak fishing
Yep.
grows. The popularity of the sports grows, and to be able to kind of like use these resources to help out in college kids like yourself, that's also amazing. And again, big props to all those three that are spearheading this work and the growth. I mean, where would we be if it wasn't for the job they're doing right now with the sport? So definitely props to them. Now going into kind of competitive. You have your brother Nolan, you have your good buddy Jackson. Or I know you guys are like, well, for you Nolan, you're actually brothers. You and Jackson are like,
Hmm.
almost brothers. Good friends.
Hmm.
Where does the friendship end and the rivalry begins for you guys? Like,
I mean, with me, Jackson, and Nolan, we're very open about our practice. When we go to a Hobie tournament, we have a group chat. We text back and forth, bounce ideas off of each other, try different things at different ends of the lake. But we're all really respectful about someone's area. If Jackson finds an area, we'll stay out of it. If Nolan finds an area, we'll stay out of it. It's you know part of that network that you see all the big names that are always doing well. You'll see if one of them does good, the rest of their house usually has a decent tournament. They're all communicating.
yeah,
It's no secret. People that aren't doing it are just getting beat by people that are helping each other out.
that's very true. The first Hobie BOS to me was in Toledo, Bend, and I was just staying by myself. I just stayed in a little studio. Didn't really socialize to anybody because I was way far away from it where anybody was sitting. Actually, the house was split in two, and the house behind it had somebody with a kayak trailer. So I'm assuming they were in the turn, but never even got to meet those people in person. And it is very different. This time I stayed, like I said, I think it was 11 of us. Can't remember. No, actually, I think it was 7 of us at the house, and just the kind of like that camaraderie of just like, hey, what did you find, and what did you now find, and what it worked for you, and what area you're fishing, and stuff like that. I think it really, at first when I started this, I kind of wanted to learn on my own. I was like, I don't want anybody telling me, like, I don't know how I feel about it. Not that I was critical or judgmental about people that kind of fishing teams, in the sense that, like yourself and Nolan and Jackson, where you communicate. But then I figured, if I want to have success, or at least shorten that learning curve, I need to get involved as well, and share what I found, and get information from the other ones, and also show respect, like you said. Just because, like I said, I was fishing with Ronaldo Landin, he would tell me, yeah, I caught him at this spot. I'm not gonna go over there now and fish that spot because I know that's where he found it. But kind of get an idea what worked for him, what didn't, which in this case everything was working. Um, and I think that's important. I kind of changed my tune about that, because I kind of understand it more now. There is a camaraderie. Once you're on the water, it's different. And now for you and, like I mentioned, Nolan and Jackson, is there anything that, not that you wish to see Jackson fail or Nolan fail, of course, but is there something like brings you a little bit of a bigger smile when you see your name atop from those two names, or does it hurt a little bit more when you're underneath those names, or does
I
it
mean,
really make the difference?
I always want to beat them both, but it's I want to beat them, but when one of them does good, it's
You're happy for them, right?
happy for them. It's great, but we, just the goal is to have at least someone finish good. If you can't at least help someone out at Toledo Bend, um, I found a place on the end of day one, and I didn't have a shot at cutting a check without something crazy. So I told my brother, he was sitting in a decent position. I was like, hey, go to this area and see what you can figure out. I only found one or two places that had fish, but I didn't spend much time there. He went there. He had a great day, cut a good check. That type of stuff, that's really huge.
Mm-hmm.
When you're practicing together in areas, like for example, today, me and Jackson, we were in the same area of Lake Chatoog. I said, hey, I found some good fish over here. If you can stay off of that, don't practice it. I've already practiced that. If I come here to this ramp, I'm going to fish it during the tournament. But at the same time, it's if I don't come to this ramp and you do, that's yours to fish. And if I'm fishing at a ramp during the tournament that he has something, we usually try to. You can't be running around like in a bass boat, so we try to help each other out as much as we can.
Definitely, and I love that camaraderie, and I'm sure all three of you being such a young age, when you look at the sport, we hope to see you guys, continue in the sport. Of course, that's your careers. Options are yours only, and you decide what you want to do. We hate to see you go to the bass board or see you go anywhere else other than kayak bass fishing, just because we enjoy watching you guys do such an excellent job. But again, that's your career choice, and we wish you the best moving forward. Now, for you personally, do you see this as just a transition period into, when you get more into you have your wife, your kids, if you decide to go that route and then, get a 9 to 5 job? Or do you feel like kayak fishing could be in the works for not just the long-term future, but not just the short-term future, but the long-term future? In other words, do you see yourself doing this 20 years from now, depending on how it grows, right?
I don't plan on stopping. If I'm not fishing kayak tournaments, I'm probably injured to where I can't fish them.
and hopefully the sport, we can't take anything for granted. Hopefully the sport will continue to grow where it's even more feasible to make a living out of it. And we've seen a couple of guys kind of make a living out of it. We see Russ Snyder doing Russ Snyder, yeah, I think it's one of them. But also, I meant to say, I had Russ Snyder on the back of my mind, but also Drew Gregory. That's another one that comes to mind as making this his full-time job and maintaining his family. So it's a lot of hard work. And Drew will tell you, there's a lot of times, when you're out on the road and not with your wife and your kids as much if you would have if you were a 9 to 5 job. What do you take from the kind of like the elders in our sport? I know Ryan Lambert has been a big mentor to you. You see guys like Drew Gregory who's doing this for a year. He's now has his own kind of like Crescent is having a kayak, that with his name branding that he designed. When you look at branding and going and making a living out of this, what have you learned most from the elders in the sports right now?
I've just heard how much making personal connections with the companies that you work with means. It's one thing if you can catch the fish, but if you can have a good relationship with them and help promote their product and possibly help improve their product, that's really what counts when it comes to taking a step from doing it as a hobby and doing it, for a full-time thing. You're never going to make enough money off of fishing tournaments.
Definitely not, unless you win. You almost did last year. You won a good chunk of money last year on the tournament. That's for a single guy your age, that's probably money that you can live with. Now, if you have kids and family, that wouldn't be enough. But yeah,
it usually goes into my kayak or prop bills for my car.
That's true. Social media, I know you see a lot of young gentlemen like yourself going into social media now. One thing that I've noticed when you look at social media, it seems like pretty easy. Oh, just make a video and upload it. But when you're in tournament fishing, you really have to take the time to practice and focus on practice. And it's not that easy. Few of them have been able to do it. Christine Fisher comes to mind. What are your thoughts on social media? Is that something that you look forward to the future expanding, or do you just want to do fishing and forget the whole social media, YouTube specifically? Because I know Instagram, you can just post a reel
Yeah.
and a photo and all that, but YouTube is more of a creator content. You ever see
Um,
yourself doing that?
I'm actually planning on getting a GoPro or maybe two. I'm not positive with the money because that's a necessary step that I need to take. Not necessarily. I might not start off making YouTube videos, but just get some clips of fish catches for Instagram or Facebook or whatever, and just to videos do a lot more than pictures.
Yeah.
People would much rather watch you catch that 6-pounder than hold it. So just being able to catch those clips on camera, and I've had way too much crazy stuff happen during a tournament to not be running a camera.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I figured it's time for that to stop, and I need to start filming.
Yeah, there's some, wildlife encounters, angry boat uh, fishermen, angry uh, landowners. There's a lot of stuff.
Angry
I
kayak fisherman.
Angry kayak fishermen as well. I know your brother had to deal with that
Yeah,
the other day. Unfortunately, I've always kind of fallen in line with what before even Christine Fisher posted that video a couple of months ago. I've always thought the same thing, and I've learned that from listening to Ryan Lambert on the KBN. That the importance of like, there is some pride involved. Like for me myself, day one was horrible. Day two, I would have loved to put in a good tournament, but I'm not gonna catch a check at this point. It was unrealistic. And then there's people out there that have a shot. Why? And not to toot my own horn, but if I can bring something to the table that somebody can take away from this podcast, listen, if you're on the water, if you go into a 2-day tournament, day one tournament, all bets are off. You can catch 5 fish in the last 30 minutes and make something out of nothing. But day two, if you didn't get a limit on the first day, um, and you're not gonna have a chance to get in the money on day two, go out there if you want, have fun, but try to be mindful of those people that are fighting for AOI, fighting for to get in the money to win the tournament. If you can, leave them the water, have communications. Oftentimes what I do, I'll ask them, it's like, hey man, I'm not in the money, or ma'am, this lady anglers out there as well, I'm not in the money. If you want this spot, I can tell you what I found. You can have that spot. For the most time, it's a pleasant um, experience and learning, and they appreciate it. The name you make for yourself within the kayak fishing community weighs more than any paycheck and any tournament winnings. That's my opinion. So I can tell you that, and you can use that to your experience on the water. That's what I would suggest. Ewing, again, congratulations. You've had an
yes,
excellent season. You got some sponsors. The only thing that I have in common with you right now is we're on the same Douglas team. So I was like, yeah, I got that in common with you. And I can't catch
yes.
him like he can, but at least I can say we're on the same team. How do you like in those Douglas rods?
No, I like them a lot. They're the Matrix series is
Yes.
incredibly sensitive. Um, they also make they make extremely good finesse stuff and extremely good big swim bait stuff. Their glide bait rod that I have, I think it's a 711 heavy. It's great for throwing a, you know, 7 to 9 inch glide bait. Handles it great. Loads up like a crankbait rod would since it's trebles. Whole rod loads. I the amount of fish I land on a glide bait now has increased significantly. I didn't know the rod could make that much of a difference. Um, and just all of their whole line of rods is good. I mainly use the LRS rods. That's I've got my favorite one is it's probably the 7.4 medium heavy. It's a good all around Texas rig, jig, throwing a Carolina rig, spoons, anything you want to throw on it. It's got a little bit softer tip, but it gets into some backbone quick.
No, definitely. They're great rods. And to be honest with you, man, when I started fishing, I had always the mentality of, the real bait caster is such a complicated, a lot of moving parts. So I thought, I'll spend more on the bait caster, whatever I have left off, I'll just use any rod. And as I've matured as an angler, I've noticed the rod, to me, my opinion, and anybody can have a different outtake on that. But to me, the rod is the most important thing. Like if I have to spend more money, I would rather spend it on the rod and get whatever reel I can afford. Now, that's if you're in a limited budget. If you can afford a great rod and a great reel, good for you. But one thing that I've noticed moving into Douglas is I rarely have a fish come off. Not that it doesn't happen, but compared to when I used to do the Bass Pro brands like the crank stick, nothing against Bass Pro, but the crank stick, I mean, I've lost so many bass on that thing until I finally changed it. The lightweight on it, my glide bait rod, I used to use the Abu Garcia Veritas rod, and I never can pronounce it. And that rod was heavy as hell, man. That's like, like using, I don't know, man. It's like a jackhammer. I don't know. It was just a broomstick, and it was like made out of lead. And since then, since I've switched to the X Matrix, my glide bait rod. I was showing it to Rolando Nandin, and he couldn't believe how light it was and how heavy you can use a bait on that
Yeah.
rod. So it is really an amazing rod. And we're not just saying that because we're sponsored. Kind of like we're both sponsored by them, but honestly, I think Ewing and I will both tell you we love those rods. We use it if we haven't been sponsored by them.
And also
Go ahead.
The guys there, they're really great. If you can get in touch with them, I think they've got their contact information on their website. They're very helpful. I personally ask them, because every rod action is different between brands. I ask them whenever I go to make an order of rods, I say, hey, what rod should I use for this? For a chatterbait, I asked, and the 715, and it's perfect. All the rods that they've suggested to me so far have been exactly what I've wanted.
Yeah, no, they're good. And Don Epsy, which handles the social media side, he's always in contact. Whenever he knows there's a tournament coming up, he'll call me and says, you have anything you need for the tournament? Also, Caleb Conrad, who I think is the head of sales for conventional rods, and Kevin Johnson. I mean, great group of people, and they do so much to support the anglers. And I know I've seen on their social media account, I've seen a bunch of your pictures there. Yeah. So, they help you out growing they've helped me out tremendously growing the podcast. So big shout out to them. I want to do a series of kind of rapid questions. I know we're almost in an hour and you're fishing. I don't want to take too long, but real quickly, if you couldn't fish for bass, Ewing, what would you be fishing for?
Does it have to be freshwater?
Doesn't matter. If you couldn't fish for bass, not allowed to fish for bass.
If I wasn't allowed to fish for bass, I'd probably either only fish for stripers or just saltwater fishing. I love fishing for stripers. It's like a big, aggressive bass.
It is.
That just doesn't jump. That's the only problem with them. But
yeah, they don't.
I love saltwater fishing. I go down for a week or two every year with my family, fish every day that weather allows it. We go offshore. We fish flats in the kayaks for redfish. I've grown up doing that, and I can't get enough of it. It's just based off of my location. I fish for bass, and I've said it a million times before. If I grew up within an hour of the coast, I probably wouldn't competitively bass fish.
Really? Well, thank God you don't. We'd love to see you at the sport. What's been your biggest win of your career so far in kayak fishing?
Broken bow.
Broken bow? Why is it? Why is it compared to, like, you've had like more than like a handful of wins already, right, between last year and this year? What is so special about broken bow that's different than the other win you've had?
It was just showing up to a very unfamiliar lake. There's almost nothing you can find out about it research-wise.
Yeah.
Just had a couple things that, some buddies told me from their experience. I think Dylan might have been the only person that told me, what his experience was. And then I went on Navionics, picked out a couple different areas to check during practice. Went in, my game plan worked, everything went smooth. Started tough on day 2, kept grinding, got what I needed. It was just overall, it felt like I worked hard for that tournament, and it felt like it was, I really really needed that one too, just after what I was going through my slump. That after having your worst tournament ever, it's makes your best tournament ever seem even better.
Yeah, I bet. Biggest weakness in kayak fishing for you? What's your biggest weakness?
Netting fish.
Biggest strength?
Boat flipping fish. I got a lot better at netting them, but just throwing that little drop shot hook the whole time. I had to net them. But day 2 of Toledo and Santee Cooper, both when I had that really big 90-inch day, I didn't bring my net. Santee Cooper, I didn't bring my net because I got to the point. I looked at everything that I had changed, and the 2 things that had changed from the year before was my kayak and my net. And I was like, I can't just go back kayaks. I already got this one. I'm stuck with it. So I got rid of my net, and I got a different net, and I finally caught them.
There you go. Aside from you, and last question, aside from you, who's the best kayak angler out there? In your opinion, who's the best?
I'd say all around well-rounded angler. I know it's since he's leading AOI for the Hobie B.O.S, it probably sounds a little ridiculous, but I'd go with Cody Milton because he's really good with live scope. So he's good offshore. He can catch them up shallow. He can catch them in clear lakes. He can catch them in grass. Really well-rounded angler. Has beat me a whole lot of times. And
you and everybody else.
And yeah, he's just a really, really good guy, cool character, and always like to see him at awards.
Yeah, no, definitely a good guy. I finally met him in person. I've had him on the podcast twice, but I never got the chance to meet him in person till today, till the Hobie Broken Bow at the Captain's Meetings. I got to see you there too, but I think I met you before at the Toledo band once.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's Cody Milton's definitely a name that comes up there. Definitely, you can't argue with that one. And I've known for a fact, having him on the podcast, I remember KBF tournament that day 1 he was using, like, I think when the live scope came out, he was using it, kind of struggled with it. Next day he just left it in the car and went without any electronics on the KBF trails day 2, and actually won day 2. So he can do it with or without electronics, which is pretty amazing. Anyways, Ewing, I've had you on about an hour, and thank you for your time. I know you're super tired. You've been fishing all day and this last week, so we wish you the best on the tournament for the college series this weekend. You, Jackson, your team, wish you the best moving forward on the Hobie B.O.S and any tournament you go into. Thank you so much for giving the time. If you want to take a few minutes, I want to give you a few minutes to give you shout outs. You're more than welcome to do that.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank you for having me on here. It's always a great time chatting with you. Dugout Bait and Tackle for everything they do for me, rigging out my tackle, making sure I have everything for tournaments, getting me into kayak tournament fishing in the first place. Douglas Rods, they're, we already talked about them. I've said everything I can say about them. It's great guys, great company. No problems there. Seagar Line, it's not a direct partnership that we have. It's through our school's team. They do a whole lot to help us out, keep us spooled up with line. That's, sorry, I lost my words. But just the program we have going with them. Another thing that a lot of people overlook is, I heard one of my buddies talking about how his live scope looked awful, is the battery that you run. I run Bio power. Those batteries, they're great. I run the 80 amp hour 12 volt, and I have crystal clear live scope. I can see a drop shot at 80 to 90 foot in clean water. And then the Newport NK1 NK180S, their trolling motor. I run the Bio 24 volt 50 amp hour on that. Covered tons of water during practice. I've covered, I mean, probably like, I think my best day as far as covering miles was like 25, 26 miles, and I just run it the whole time.
Yeah, that'll be crazy without that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
well, congratulations again, Ewan. You've earned every single one of your sponsors with the great job you're doing, and you've not only that, but on and off the water, you're a great dude. Wise and mature beyond your years. We wish you the best moving forward, both in and out of the water. For those out there listening, again, big thanks to Douglas Rod. We've mentioned him before. Go to douglasoutdoors.com. Check out their full lineup. If you suck at fishing like me, you can use him. If you're an amazing angler like Ewan, you can use them. So it's all great all around, Rod. So big thanks to Ewan. If you're going to be on the water, if you're going to have a couple of beers, please be responsible, guys and girls, and please wear your PFDs. Have a great time, everyone. Peace out.